Hey everyone, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat podcast. Wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today, welcome in. So glad you are here. We have over 320 episodes or something like that now, so we're in season 10. It continues to grow and spread in exciting ways. And my commitment to the listener, every time you sit down to have one of these, join into one of these chats or one of these pods, my hope is that this breathes a little oxygen into you, helps you think about the temperature that you're trying to set in your life and your work. And I appreciate you being here. If you'll do the quick favor, of course, I keep being reminded to say this every time, to subscribe, to rate the podcast 5 stars, of course, to share it, to do all the stuff. Leave an authentic review in your own words. Anybody that does that, appreciate that. That's how the algorithm works, helps it reach more and more people. So thanks for everybody that takes a moment to do that. I'm very excited to invite my guest in just a minute to the chat. Mickey Marotti is, known across American football as one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the industry. He currently serves as the Assistant Athletic Director for Football Sports Performance at The Ohio State University. His famed career of developing and supporting some of the best athletes on the planet has taken him all across the country and as a coach at places like Notre Dame, Florida, The Ohio State University. He has been celebrated by coaches such as Urban Meyer and Ryan Day as the heartbeat and leader of the Ohio State football program's culture. Most importantly, he is a husband, he's a father, he's a coach and mentor to countless people. Coach Mick and I had the pleasure of crossing paths recently as part of a Germain Automotive Partnership Culture Summit that they do. I've been fortunate to be supporting the Germains, wonderful people, so shout out to everybody at Germain. Been fortunate to be supporting them in the development of their leaders and their culture across their company for many years now. And as Mick and I began to talk, we knew there was great synergy to our work in setting the temperature of culture. So I'm excited to welcome in to the pod, Mickey Marotti.
How you doing, Jason?
Good, buddy. Great to be connected again with you and to get a few minutes to kind of carry the conversation forward and chat a little bit.
Absolutely. Fired up.
Let's go, man. Well,
Let's go.
You're right in the thick of
Turn it up.
Let's turn up the temperature. Here we go. You're right in the thick of spring practice right now. The off season, of course, kind of sets that foundation for the year ahead. Just quickly, how's it going? How's the spring so far?
It's going well. We are right in the middle of spring ball with 2 more weeks left. It's been great so far. A lot of new faces, a lot of new dynamics that we're working through as a football program, but very challenging, very demanding. But we're looking forward to finishing out spring ball strong and get into our summer program and going from there.
Awesome. Well, I've got a lot of questions that we'll get to that will, touch on some of that.
Yeah.
But first, I want to start with you because I know oftentimes we're talking about the team and culture and developing other people. But the first question I want to ask is really about you. You're a celebrated person in your profession. Obviously, this podcast is called the Thermostat podcast, as you know, and based off of one of my books, Thermostat Cultures. And so we talk a lot about articulating what is the temperature that we're trying to set. And not only is that for a team perspective, but what is the culture that we're trying to create? But it also comes down to an individual level. So in your life these days, which is different than it was even 20 years ago, but how do you articulate the temperature that Coach Mick is trying to set in your life these days?
Great question. At least in the work environment at The Ohio State University and my job responsibilities, one of the goals or one of the culture pieces that I try to live by is consistency. I feel like I have to be the most consistent person in our building, probably because they see me every day. They spend time with the performance staff more than they do with their position coaches or the academic counselors or really everybody that's involved in their lives. So I just feel like me in a leadership role, I have to be consistent. I have to make sure that I stay, flatlined. I don't get too, well, I take that back. I do get too high sometimes, and I try not to get too low. But they just got to know that there's always a consistent person, at least in their lives around the building. As part of my life, I try to do the same thing with my family. I'm a recent grandfather. My daughter had
Wow.
a
Congrats,
baby
man.
boy. Thank you. He's 8 months old already. So, a little different, a little different chapter going through that. But I try to be that, my wife is the rock of the family. She runs, I just listen to her. She runs the thing, like most of our wives
Yeah.
out there.
Agreed.
And I try to support her like she supports me, and support our children and now our grandson. So yeah, it's busy. It's busy.
Yeah.
And what I try not to do is bring work home.
Hmm.
I don't want my wife to hear my problems at work
Yep.
or what's going on, especially in this glass bowl of Ohio State. I don't. Now, she knows more than I do because she's on social media, but we have a rule. We do not talk about work. We try to, have our own time and talk about our kids and now our grandson. So
Well, I love that. I love hearing that because, we didn't get a chance to talk about that, when we chatted last. But, we talk about he or she who aims at nothing hits it every time. So what is it that we're actually aiming for? And that starts personally with, what is that temperature that we're trying to set, when we walk into the building, and to think about you being that consistent presence in the building is huge. And then certainly on this podcast, we, not only is it for teams and organizations and executives and people that are thinking about their careers, but the temperature and the culture that you're creating at home and with your spouse and with your kids, and to be intentional about what that culture is that you're trying to create. So I'm always, that's the stuff that I think is
yeah,
fascinating. You're in the development business. You're helping people grow. You're helping people to develop it in ways that they can't always see for themselves. You're trying to stretch them. And I'm interested because in the development world, certainly in leadership development and any of the stuff that I'm doing with teams and organizations across industries, is you're trying to help people to develop their mindset and the way they think, and stretching, how do they show up? What are the mindsets that you see in terms of trying to develop these athletes and help them kind of go beyond where they are?
yeah, great perspective of, we meet these student athletes when they're in 8th, 9th, 10th grade during the recruiting process, the majority of them. And we are trying to recruit them to come to our campus and be part of our program. So we get to know a lot about them, their family, kind of their upbringing, what their goals and aspirations are. And a lot of them come highly touted. A lot of them come 4 or 5 stars, really the best in the country at their position. A lot of
When
them.
you're at Ohio State, that's what you're going to get, is you're going to have access to some of the most talented,
Yes,
people, right?
yes. And when we get them and they see it and they see what's going on and they see the rest of their teammates, it might not look like that when they get here as freshmen. So we have to convince them. We have to work with them on a daily basis to help set goals, to help set objectives, maybe not the long term of professional football or whatever it may be, just short-term goals. We have an 8-week off-season program. We had 30 freshmen into our program in January. Here's your goals. Here's where you're at physically. Here's where you're at mentally. Here's where you're at emotionally. Here's our goals for the next 8 weeks. So we try to set systematic goals throughout the year. And then you have those daily experiences. You have the accountability. You have all the things that you have to do to reach those goals. And there's always feedback. There's always the telling of truth, which I am the truth teller in the building. Where you're at, what you need to continue to work on, what you need to enhance, what you need to improve on, and here's where you're at. And when it's going great, awesome. Keep it going, keep enhancing. When it's not going great, let's find out why. Let's dive into what may be going on in your personal life. Let's dive into, and here we have what's called an athletic performance team. So it's not just me or my strength staff, it's the athletic performance team, the sports psychologists, the athletic trainers, the nutritionists, the strength conditioning, the physical therapist, anybody that works with our players. And we talk about our team every week and we go down through the roster. How's this guy doing? How's that guy doing? And you'll find out that when things are going great in one area, they're probably going great in another area.
Yep.
And when things aren't going great in an area, something else is about ready to go sideways. So I call it perpetual development. Kind of you're developing every day, all the time, and through daily experiences, that's kind of where we're headed. So
yeah, no, I love it because I talk a lot about again, developing culture and developing ourselves as human beings is not a drive-through experience. It's an everyday thing. And so you talk about that, and part of the language I use, which fits exactly with what you're describing, is I talk about you having a long-term vision, but short-term plans.
Yes.
The long-term vision may be I want to go to the NFL or I want to be the best and we want to win the national championship. But the short-term plan is, well, what are we going to do over this next stretch? And I have to do an exercise with clients. We talk about the 3-month action plan, which is kind of that 8 or 9 week stretch that you're talking about, to break it down and say, all right, well, what does that development look like so that we can take this vision but start to bring it into reality? And my guess is with that whole performance team, part of it is, you got to stay in alignment together, that it's not just Coach Mick, who's you're accountable for a lot of this, but it's not your only voice. So you've got other perspectives and folks. Talk to me about how to keep that team and that performance team in alignment of what the goals and objectives are for an individual player.
Yeah, that's to me, it's paramount for your organization's culture, because the culture comes from, at least in my business, the head football coach. So what do we want our culture to be? Then my job is to help drive that culture in every day, along with our performance staff. So when we do meet, I have to make sure that performance team is all aligned with the goals and the mission and the culture that the head football coach, Coach Ryan Day, has established, and make sure we stay on that path. And when it starts getting sideways, that's kind of when we get it all back together. Because if we're not in alignment, then how do we expect our team and our players to be in alignment from what we're saying? So we all say the same thing. We all, work on the same things. We all talk about the same things. So everybody knows everybody's business, I guess, in a way, for development.
Yeah, you have to be, because if you're not in alignment, then how could you expect anyone else to be? And, we know that, again, you're at a place like Ohio State. You have access to talent that is, you get your foot in the door by being Ohio State. And yet we know that talent alone does not win. I mean, we could sit here and we could cite all the examples of that, of the most talented teams do not always win. But the cultures that are created are the ones that are the differentiators. And language helps drive behavior. And so how we talk about, and so even what you just described is, hey, well, what is that culture? How do you describe the culture that you're trying to create? What is some of that language? I've heard phrases like tough love and others that you've heard in the past. But how do you articulate? Because if you can't describe culture to somebody, then we can't be surprised when it doesn't exist. So we need language to help describe, this is the future that we're trying to create for how we show up together. How do you guys
Absolutely
talk about it?
Well, number one, you got to know what the culture is. And our culture is fight. Fight to be the best version of yourself every day. That's our culture. So when coach is talking or I'm talking and we say, what's our culture? Everybody knows it's fight. Our motto is we do it by tough love. We love our players. We don't do it by fear. We do it by love. But we have to hold each other accountable. So you have you have your culture fight. Now, how do you fight? You fight with 4 to 6, A to B, +2, relentless effort. That's how you fight. You fight with something we call competitive excellence, making the play when your number's called. Who do you fight for? You fight for your unit, your organization, your class, whatever it may be. So we've got definite definitions of kind of how we go about doing this. And again, it's a daily experience. And culture, like you said, is not a drive-by. It's every day, every minute, every second. It is. And when everything's going in the right direction, then you really start seeing development, because it's okay to hold someone accountable. It's okay to, tell someone, hey, you need to pick it up, or it's okay to, because they're not threatened. And we operate in that, we call it tough love. We operate in a family, and everybody's been part of a family where everything doesn't go right every day.
That's right.
And you got to figure it out. But when you leave the weight room, leave the facility, leave the building, you still love each other, and it's all for the brotherhood, like we talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, no doubt. And what you're describing, and again, in the culture shaping world, is language drives behavior. And so again, if I can't describe it, then how? And so even defining, what does it mean to fight? And what does tough love really mean? And tough love isn't that because I'm the coach, I have all the power, I get to yell at you and demean you, and just you're supposed to do what I want. The love is the relationship, is the connection, is the believing in the actual person, and that we together are trying to accomplish something greater than ourselves. And in that, it's going to be tough. And we're going to have to fight individually, and we're going to have to fight collectively. And yet, if I'm an athlete, or if I'm somebody that is a part of an organization who has this language, I have to learn that. And I've got to understand what we mean by those words, and that's where the language helps drive behavior, and that's where core values and language like this becomes a tool. It's not a poster, but it's a tool for how we show up and develop every single day.
Yep.
And then, as you mentioned earlier, the landscape is changing, though, man. Like college sports in general is changing so much, and with the transfer portal, and with now so many people, rosters coming together in different ways, that now from the outside perspective, and again, this kind of thing has been happening in organizations all the time, is that people get a better deal or get a better offer or want to jump somewhere else, they go there. But you all are now in this environment where now the shaping of culture is sped up, and you've got all these different people that are coming together. What's that experience been like lately, of now trying to help educate and really teach and bring people into the culture even quicker, maybe?
Yeah, like I said a few weeks ago, it has been a huge challenge. But that being said, when, at least in our revolving door of year to year, when guys leave, and now, in our team room, we set the first row is all the seniors, and then the juniors, sophomores, freshmen. And we always talk about each year you're going to be moving closer and closer to the front row. And it's funny, like a kid an athlete that might have been a freshman or a sophomore, all of a sudden they move up 2 rows, and it's almost like pixie dust has been spread over their body, and they change. So those guys have done a great job bringing the new players into our culture. So the things that we were, talking about to them 2 years ago about accountability and being the best version of yourself, and tough love, and it's hard, and nobody cares, and all the little slogans that we have.
Yep. Now
they're the ones bringing these young guys and these new players with the transfer portal. And it's been very great to see the development of leaders and leadership from the guys moving up when it's now their turn. So I think leadership has a lot to do with it, and cultivating and motivating those leaders to continue to drive that culture, because ultimately the leaders create the culture.
Yep.
They do.
Yep.
When we're not around, that's them.
No doubt.
So we got to make sure that we are all on the same page in terms of what our culture really is.
Yeah, and my guess is you got to double down into that development. So if I'm somebody that's coming in from a different place, and I haven't had the benefit of being here for 2 or 3 years, I haven't heard that, I haven't learned that, I haven't gone through the experiences to learn the culture here, and so you become even more reliant on those other leaders within the program. And also, how do we help bring people up to speed around this culture that is ultimately what unites us? And so that intentional, and you and I talked, I think, briefly about this before, but I've been having these conversations with others. Actually, just Clark Kellogg yesterday, he and I were talking about this.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, about from the basketball perspective, but talking about this idea that, in so many places, people are saying that it's now so transactional. And yet, as you step back and you watch the programs that are winning and the places that are still rising to the top, yes, are there transactional things that are happening? Of course. But they're the ones that are committed to that transformational relationship, connection. They have older people that are developing and are a part of that culture. And are you seeing that same shift, that there's the transformational relationship, connection, culture stuff is still as important as ever?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you see it like we were just talking about a little bit ago. I mean, you see it. And it's so important to have those conversations and those meetings and those promotional activities to help. Because again, we're not dealing with a 38-year-old CEO for some company or a 45-year-old CEO that's been around. You're dealing with 17, 18, 19-year-old, really young men and women in our athletic department.
Yep.
But it's different than it was. We've got these athletes coming up 17, 18, 19. They were in 6th and 7th grade when COVID hit.
Yeah.
They were taking history lessons like we're talking right now. All I have to do is if I'm tired of listening to you, I just shut it down.
That's right.
So
I don't think you and I should be teaching history either. So
no, we shouldn't.
No.
Although I do love history,
Yeah.
But they lived in a world where it was easy to, if you didn't want to do it, you just hit the camera off.
That's right.
And play on your phone. And now we're seeing the residual from that COVID era of middle school.
Yeah.
Now so here we go. Now we have to, we're going to do this, this, and this. And we have to show them, we have to teach them, we have to lead them. And a lot of times it's the coaching staff and the professionals that have to lead them until the others catch up to speed. So the cool thing about my job and the cool thing about being here is every month, every day, every week is different. And it's a new challenge because you're dealing with human beings. You're not dealing with AI or, some of the things we got to deal with. But yeah, that's all part of this culture, leadership.
Yeah.
All runs hand in hand.
No doubt. And I think your point about COVID is a great one, because generationally, these are people, that's what they grew up with. That's what they came through. And so the experience is different. I was having a conversation with Andrew Whitworth, will be a Hall of Famer, I think, at some point, but on the Amazon telecast. And he had a great way to describe the way he sees younger generations right now and these players that are evolving and the kind of leadership that they're looking for. And I thought it was a great way that we talked about it. He said, it used to be some of these older school mentality was just like, yeah, the leader tells me what to do, and yeah, I'll go do it. And now this younger generation is almost like they're the YouTube generation that really they're used to learning that way, and really what they want is the leaders to come aside them. And they want to help give that kind of feedback on a daily basis, but they want to know that you are in a supportive, encouraging, but that it's a participatory kind of thing.
Yes.
You're involved with. Are you seeing that same kind of generation?
100%. I call it the why generation. They want to know why.
Yep.
And you have to do a great job explaining the purpose, the mission, the why behind anything. And then you have to really, the leaders that have shown that they could do it, you involve them, and they earn the right to be involved in conversations. A lot of the things that we do in terms of training and how we set up our off-season programs is involved with our leadership program. So, we involve, it's kind of like back in the day, I would present the program.
Yep.
I would present how we're going to do it, and we would clap, and that was it. Now what I do is I present the program to the 20 leaders that were voted by their teammates. Yep. And we just did it yesterday. And I'm going to say, what are your thoughts? Give me your input.
Yep.
What do you think about this? You guys are in a locker room. What is the residual effect of if we did it this way? And we're always trying to challenge them. But myself and Coach Day put it in a way where they feel like they give feedback. When they give feedback, they feel like it's theirs. When they feel like it's theirs, they have ownership. Now that they have ownership, when they go in the locker room, which is their safe haven, their space, they can relay whatever the message is from the leadership, which they are a part of. And that's kind of that's how you have great culture, because the players on the team are really the majority of what we're looking for in terms of leadership.
Totally. Any of my listeners or people that read my books, this is going to sound so familiar, because it's the shift from that top-down style of leadership to that servant leadership, bottom-up kind of leadership, that it's participatory. And what that means is that we create that sense of buy-in by that it's not just about what I say that I want for us, but it's what do we want for us. And what do we buy into, how we're together going to go attack this, and what's the strategy of how, and then we all are ambassadors for that culture. And so, and once we've had a say in it, and it's not just somebody from the top saying this is what it's going to be, there's greater sense of buy-in and accountability, and it becomes reciprocal, because now I'm a part of it, and I have an obligation to set that temperature for the people around me. I'm wondering, as you're in this new space, you got not only new players coming in, but you got new coaches that are coming in each year too. Are there new voices, or are you seeing some players kind of emerge now that hadn't been in leadership roles but are kind of rising to the surface? Are there new coaches that are coming in that their voice is resonating with people? Are there folks that have been around forever that more than ever they're reinvigorated by this new? Talk to me about kind of what's going on currently.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let's start with the coaches. So we have a few new coaches that are now on staff. Coach Day does a great job of teaching what the culture is and teaching the why behind that culture to our staff. Right. And we do that once, twice a month, just to kind of rebite on a lot of the principles that we talk to our players about. And then what we try to do is obviously try to cultivate these leaders from a group that may or may not have been in that role in years past. The last 2 years, we have been blessed with some of the best leaders that I've ever been around in the years that I've been doing this. And it's funny, like the reason, to me, one of the reasons why our season got turned around in 2024 from really, really, really bad to extraordinary run that we made was because of leadership. Because we had that foundational leadership within our program. Last year, it continued. Great leaders. I think of guys like Cody Simon the year before in 2024, who was our captain, was the Block O, was a ridiculous leader. And then how he helped cultivate and grow and develop Sonny Styles. So a lot of our culture development doesn't come from myself or Coach Day or the coaches. It actually comes from each unit or the players. And now we've lost so many. We are the voice right now, and we're kind of nudging guys to start. But we literally just picked our leadership council yesterday, where the players actually voted for their team, and we'll take like the top 18 vote getters, and that's our leadership council. And now we'll start diving into leadership development and how we're going to continue to push the culture, and how we're going to set up the off season, get their feedback, what they need to do, what we need to do, how can we make it better, how can we enhance it, what do we need to change, and that'll start here very soon.
Love it. That's, again, listeners, this is Culture Shaping 101, man. This is helping to establish that group of people. Again, high level from culture shaping. People first need to hear it and see it. So we got to hear it and see it. What is this tough love stuff you're talking about? What does it mean to fight? What is it? We got to hear it and see it. And then there's a phase of now we got to go practice it and develop it. What is it? Not just cognitively do I understand what that means, but what do I practice that, and do I develop what that looks like in action and behavior? And then in more mature teams and cultures, then the players themselves, the other people throughout an organization, they start teaching it and sharing it with the people around them. overall, eventually, that becomes the air we breathe. That becomes the temperature that we set, but it doesn't happen by accident. I'm wondering, I'll wrap us up here in just a couple of minutes, but I'm wondering if you had any advice to people that are listening to this that aren't in the sports world, and they might not be 18, 19, 20 years old, but they may be in their career. They may be battling in their profession to, hey, I want our team and our organization to raise the level of how we do what we do. Maybe I've got a goal for where I'm trying to go in my career, or whatever the listener's thinking about. But what advice would you give to employees or to people that might be listening to this beyond sports to say, how does some of this translate?
Yeah, great question. I think number one is, and it's funny, like we ask, when I meet with the players, I ask every player, like, what do you want? Like, what do you want? What do you want out of this? Everybody, there's different answers and I would ask your listeners, like, what do you want out of your career? Like, and I always say, where do you want to be in 3 years? Where do you want to be in 1 year? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Like, what do you want? Okay, now let's develop a plan. Let's develop a leadership plan. Let's develop a cultural plan for you on how you're going to get there. But I have to know, or you have to know, what you really want. Like, are you just coming to collect a paycheck? Or you really want to be the best in the world at what you do? Do you really want that corner office? Do you really want the promotion? Do you really want, to retire at age 55? Like, if you want to do that, okay, well, you might have to change some of the things that you're doing or have done. But I think, number one, I think they got to know what they want first. Before you start changing things, like, what are you changing for? I just think you got to know what you want and where you want to go. Once you do that, I think anybody can be a leader. Anybody can be, we always talk about the no talent issues. I hate to use our players, but, a lot of them, the talent that they've got has been God-given. Mm-hmm. They have to develop the discipline and the skill. They no talent, effort has nothing to do with talent. Grinding, reading a book or whatever has nothing to do with a talent, or nothing to do with talent, just effort and want to and determination, like all those non-negotiables that we talk about all the time, attitude and effort and, intensity and accountability, like those take zero talent. So it's not about, what you don't have, but go get it, just go get it.
I love it. That's why there's so much synergy. That's why when we met together, when we started talking, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great, because there's so much synergy, the stuff that I'm doing every day and talking with teams and organizations about. But I asked that very question. Well, what is it you want? Or when companies and organizations come to me and say, we want to change our culture. Well, okay, well, what do you want it to become? Tell me what you want. And then where you look is where you go. So we got to know where it is that we're looking. And then we've got to strategize to say, okay, well, what are we going to do to roll up our sleeves and intentionally go create that? And it doesn't happen by accident. And so, to be a thermostat culture means I've got to know, well, what is the temperature we're aiming for? And then what does it mean to go set that temperature every single day? And it's not going to happen overnight, but I'm going to have to continue to breathe oxygen into that and going to continue to have to follow it. So I love that, man. This is why when we first connected, I know that there's such great synergy in the way that we were talking about things. Any final questions you'd have for me, or that you would ask to the audience before we kind of wrap up here?
I guess the question I have for you is, out of all the companies and people you deal with, like, what is like one common denominator that all these companies or these organizations have when they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'll answer that in two ways. One, when they reach out, they know that there's something that they want to create that's greater than what that exists, right? And so they know that culture can be better. Culture is never finished. I talk about the fact that culture is dynamic. It's not static. So it's always changing. And so just because you had a great culture yesterday at The Ohio State University does not mean it's guaranteed for tomorrow. We've got to show up and we've got to co-create that again tomorrow. and we've got to continue to breathe oxygen into that, right? So they know there's something that they want more of, and yet they need some help guiding and or support to say, how would we strategize, and how do we begin to move people forward? The other thing, the other side of that, I say, is what is the common denominator? In my opinion right now, it's the organizations that have the best cultures, which, by the way, I'm yet to find the perfect one. There's no perfect culture, right? There's challenges, obstacles, every single place you go. But the ones that are thriving, that are winning, that are, again, not perfect, but they are attracting people that want to be a part of that, is because it's about more than what you're trying to do. It's about how you're trying to do it, and the care and the relationship with human beings, and they recognize somebody as valuable and that you are a valuable contributor. You're going to help us co-create that culture. And when people start to see, and all of this shows up in research, that's what employees want. They want to be a part of something more meaningful. And then the organizations that understand that it's not just about the product or service they sell, it's about the culture they create in order to get there, the outcomes tend to follow, just as you said earlier.
Yep. Great stuff.
Yeah, man. So I'm already fired up for our next conversation. Whenever that is, I'm already fired up about it. And I know you've got so much going on right now. And by the way, all that development, it fires me up to think about you guys making those decisions. Who is that next leadership council? What are we strategically doing to, culture's dynamic, which means it's always being shaped. It's shaped by the way we think, act, and interact. So how are we shaping the way people think? How do we shape the way then our own individual actions and behaviors? And then how we interact as a culture is going to create the outcome that we're going to experience further down the road. So thanks, man, for everything that you do.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate the spirit with which you bring to the work, and so glad you took a moment to jump on and have this chat.
Well, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Awesome.
Oh, let's do it again.
All right, man. I'll hold you to that.
There you go.
We'll for sure do that, because I'll be following along too and cheering you guys on as always. I want to thank the listeners for being a part of this today. Hopefully this conversation, got you fired up in some ways. Hopefully it breathed a little oxygen into you, and hopefully it gave you a chance to kind of step back and think about what is it that you want for yourself personally. What is it you want for your team and your organization and the culture that you're trying to create? And how do you articulate that temperature that you're trying to set? And then what would you intentionally and proactively go do to set that? So thanks again for everybody chiming in. Again, I hope you'll subscribe, rate, review, all the things. Share this. If it resonates with you, share it with other people. And we appreciate you being a part of this. And I'll just remind you to step back, remember, be a thermostat, and breathe good oxygen.